Got the message.
Okay, Bob, if you didn't hear that, we are recording.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the March meeting of the Houston Archaeological Society. My name's Bob Sewell, and I'm the president of the society. And I'd like to welcome Becky Shelton, who is with the Texas Historical Commission as an archaeologist, who will be discussing the work of the Texas Archaeological Stewardship Network. Becky received her master's in anthropology from the University of Texas Arlington in 2008. While completing her degree, she began working at AR Consultants Inc. in Dallas, Texas, as a field technician, then served as a project archaeologist and principal investigator. She conducted desktop evaluation surveys and testing for projects in Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Arkansas. Before developing a passion for Texas archaeology, her background in fine art, art conservation, uh, and collections management fostered an interest in Maya ceramics. From 2009 to 2013, she participated as the lab director, ceramicist for the Caves Branch Archaeological Project Field School in Belize, teaching artifact identification and analysis. Since 2014, Becky has served as a regional archaeologist for North Central and Northeast Texas with the Texas Historical Commission Archaeology Division. Amongst other responsibilities, she provides technical reviews on state and federal development projects related to the Antiquities Code of Texas and Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. She currently also serves as the coordinator for the Texas Archaeological Stewardship Network, which is why a lot of HAS members actually know her. So please welcome Becky Shelton. Over to you, Becky.
Well, thank you very much for that very nice introduction. I do appreciate you all inviting me to come and speak with you tonight. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there in Houston, but I just appreciate the opportunity. As you noted, one of my major roles with the Texas Historical Commission is working with the Archaeological Stewardship Network. But before I launch into some of the highlights and activities of that program, I wanted to provide you all with some important kind of their agency-wide updates about what is happening within the Texas Historical Commission. If I get my slides to advance. Okie dokie. There it goes. So many of y'all may be familiar with the important role that the Texas Historical Commission plays within the state of Texas. But just to highlight the depth and the breadth of some of the responsibilities that the Archaeology Division is responsible for, I just wanted to go ahead and give you an overview because this information I'm going to share lends to the importance of why our relationship with the Stewardship Network is so critical in the state. So, the Texas Historical Commission is a relatively small state agency, and some of our major mandates are to identify, protect, and preserve Texas's irreplaceable archaeological heritage. We use a regional approach. As Bob mentioned, I'm the Northeast Texas regional archaeologist. There's only a handful of us to cover the entire state. Our agency, the THC, is designated as the State Historic Preservation Office for Texas. So our responsibilities include maintaining the inventory of sites that are significant, actually all recorded archaeological sites in the state of Texas. We also play a critical role in the preservation of historic places, such as the Alamo. So it's not just archaeological sites, but significant above ground, National Register, districts, etc. So this handful of archaeologists, in addition to doing this recording of sites and maintaining the inventory, we also have a pretty important role. We have to review public construction projects that may impact significant sites. We manage the state antiquities landmark designation program. We actually serve as a support staff for the Texas Antiquities Advisory Board. And I think Doug Boyd knows a little bit about that organization. And we record and evaluate sites, advise archaeologists, property owners, much like our stewards do, much like members of HAS do, and your landowner interactions. And we basically provide a lot of consultation to the general public regarding the state and federal laws and rules that apply, even with unmarked graves or historic cemeteries, such as the Texas Health and Safety Code, which is a relatively new burial protection law that Texas has. When I say relatively new, 2009, when you think about a lot of the other state and federal laws that pertain to archaeological resources, they date back to the 60s and 70s. So, and finally, and this will be the kind of the bulk of my talk tonight, is our regional archaeology or landowners assistance program is what we refer to it as. That involves our volunteer network, the Stewards, obviously Texas Archaeology Month that you're familiar with. We have a special designation called Historic Texas Land Plaques. But throughout all these activities, how does this little state agency manage to do this as well? We partner with regional and local societies and, of course, our volunteers. One of the things that is expanded as part of our mandates or our responsibilities is we oversee the curatorial facility certification program, which ensures that facilities that have held in trust collections of artifacts that are pulled from archaeological sites that are on state lands, they must be, if they're collected, they must be held in repositories that meet current museum standards. And the reason I bring this up is because one of the major changes that has happened in our organization is that's the wrong direction. Is there's been a reorganization of our state agency, and there's pretty specific impacts that have happened to specifically the archaeology division. And I won't go into all the reasons why, just due to time constraints, but this has empowered the archaeology division to be responsible for much more of conservation and preservation of our cultural heritage here in the state of Texas. At the end of 2025, our commissioners approved multiple steps to reorganize and streamline the agency. So the first step was the archaeology division absorbed the historic sites staff archaeologist. Many of you all know Sarah Chesney, Reese Black, and of course Brett Cruz, who serves now as the chief archaeologist for the all state historic sites. But we also absorbed the collections that are associated with all of the state historic sites, which has gone from around 20 to 42 locations in the state of Texas. Other important changes, as you can see in that second column on the lower tier, is within our regional archaeologist, Marie Archambault, who served as a reviewer and regional archaeologist for many, many years, is now a full-time tribal liaison, and she works closely with the entire agency in discussions and coordination with the 29 federally recognized tribes, here in the state of Texas. And a big part of that is how it impacts our programs, such as our interpretive exhibits at the historic sites. What that means for us and for y'all, and this is a big push to be more engaged in public archaeology. I know that Houston Archaeology Society has been pretty involved in a lot of the work that's been done at San Felipe over the years, but I wanted to let you about more things that are happening kind of within your region. So the second part of the reorganization was that when the archaeology division absorbed the collections management for all the historic sites, and their staff came on board to work directly with us, is that we want to build on the success of the collections work that's been happening at San Felipe and at our lab. We have an archaeology lab in East Austin where we actually have been really stepping up our curatorial activities of our in-house collections, but also collections that are loaned or temporary with us, such as we're currently processing the Texas Archaeology Society 2025 field school, specifically from the youth group area. When we work with volunteers and we train students, and that has been a big request, is that the public really wants to be more engaged, hands-on with archaeology in real time and real place. And so this collaboration, this merging of responsibilities allows us to start looking towards more collections-based projects for our agency, but to also create space for projects by local stewards, volunteer groups, universities, at our historic sites. So stay tuned. Hopefully there will be more opportunities. I know that y'all have a lot of projects ongoing as well, but if we can expand or have collections-based opportunities, specific, especially training and artifact identification at our historic sites, we'll be keeping you updated. We get asked a lot about what's going on in our agency, like what projects are we working on right now? And so this gives me the opportunity to share some of that information. At the Levi Jordan plantation, which is the 19th century sugar and cotton plantation, Stantec is completing the sub-LiDAR and GPR work to try and identify new structures on state property and through LiDAR, the surrounding properties. This will inform us where future excavations could be conducted. Again, that could be more public archaeology opportunities where we have ongoing work in public spaces. And then, as y'all know, this is really exciting for us, is the acquisition of the Presidio La Bahia in Goliad. It was established in 1749. There's some neat opportunities or activities coming up at the end of March there. They have their 40th annual Goliad Massacre and Living History program. I don't know how exciting that is, but there's battle reenactments, cap demos, and a candlelight tour. Their exhibit space within the Presidio is really pretty incredible. Their interpretive panels and just the artifacts that they have available. One of the things that makes that exhibit really interesting or just enticing is that we've talked about the upcoming field school will be held at Presidio San Xavier outside of Rockdale this coming summer. And it's the same time period of artifacts. You've got 18th century forged metal artifacts on display at the Presidio La Bahia, and then you could it helps you kind of see what you're seeing on the ground. It was really informative for us when we were looking for the original Mission Espiritu Santo, which we relocated last December, not very far from Gilead. So this is where collections, education, and going and visiting museums and seeing what's out there informs us of what we find on the ground or in the ground, right? This is not one of our state historic sites, but this is a really incredible program. This just happened on March 14th, but we were recently informed that Parks and Wildlife has developed a tactile model which was created in conjunction with and for use by visually impaired folks. This was a project that took several years in the making, and it involved a lot of feedback from blind and low sight participants. After trying several models and techniques, they found the one that was satisfactory to the blind community. It involved a laser scan of the site, and you can see there's a 3D model that was prepared for museum visitors to engage as well. So this is new and exciting technology, and I hope to see much more like this in the coming years at our sites and others. Other things that are happening at the historic sites, like I said, there's that relationship is really changing with our archaeology division. April 11th, they've got some events coming up. But one of the things I wanted to share with you on the updates is that long time in coming, the construction of the maintenance and archaeology and retail and storage place, also called Mars, is moving along. They finally got the electrical connection set up for that. And there's probably going to be a soft opening this summer with a larger, more formal celebration for Texas Archaeology Month. And again, we're hoping to have more public, archaeology events and opportunities at that site through that construction of the archaeology lab, so that there'll be something on site that we can do projects at. But many other opportunities in your area. There's the San Jacinto Battleground, the Washington the Brazos. Many of y'all are familiar with that. So I bring this up because stay tuned. Once we get our communication and kind of schedules in place, we'll be able to share specifically with our regional societies and our stewards network upcoming volunteer opportunities at these historic sites. These couple of slides have just highlighted historic sites and locations that are near y'all. Again, there's 42 within the state of Texas. Other major changes that I know that impacted y'all directly. Jeff Durst retired last year. He was with us for 26 years. I know he worked really closely with the Houston Archaeological Society, and I know he was involved in many projects with y'all. He was followed by Roland Patramule. He retired after 33 years with us. Many of y'all know him through his creative work, his illustrations. He was our main graphic designer for the publications and, of course, all the Texas Archaeology Month posters. And so we are sad to see him go. And the reason I bring this up, because I think it's important to introduce our new staff. That handful of regional archaeologists that we work with that are going to be your main points of contact through our agency. Mindy Bonine, she joined us early February. Her region will be East Texas, and Christopher Ringstaff is going to be doing a lot of public outreach. And his review region is in and around Houston, but his public outreach, his regional archaeology is going to be more Central Texas. So we welcome them. And I share this with you guys because it's important for us to make sure y'all know who to contact. If you have any inquiries or any questions about your county and your area. In addition to Christopher Ringstaff for your Houston area contact, so who's your regional archaeologist with Jeff retiring? Your main points of contact are going to be Sarah Chesney and probably Christopher Ringstaff. For those public inquiries, those non-regulatory landowner assisted questions that you might have. And we'll be formalizing that a little bit more in the coming months as far as who to talk to and what questions you may want to ask. All right, so I'm almost done with the agency updates before I talk about our public archaeology. The reason I share this information about the volume of review and compliance that we encounter is that regional archaeologists would like to spend our entire time working with the public, doing public archaeology, working at the sites, doing the investigations that we all love so very much. However, part of that agency role that we have as the State Historic Preservation Office is that we are required to conduct these reviews. And so we receive over almost 10,000 inquiries a year. We've issued, in the last 2 years, a little over 500 permits per fiscal year. And those are just antiquities permits. As you all know, 95% of Texas is privately owned, and so regulatory work, development work only comes across, to our attention if there's state-owned lands or if there's a federal um, trigger, which is referred to as an undertaking, if it's federally funded, federally permitted, or on federal lands. And so there's not a lot of federal lands in Texas. Um, there's obviously the national parks, the Forest Service, um, and a handful of small portions of tribal lands. However, it's those federal permits that usually trigger those reviews. And so it's a balancing act. And so when we say, please, can you help us with this inquiry, or we've got a landowner assistance question that we can't get to in a timely fashion, it's because we're juggling a lot of different responsibilities at the agency. All right, I'm almost done with this portion of it. All right, now this is the part that I like to talk about the most, and I think as Bob introduced, this is going to be kind of the main topic of our discussion tonight. So how does this little state agency with the mandate to be responsible for maintaining the database and providing assistance and education for managing our archaeological resources in Texas is we're incredibly lucky that this program called the Texas Archaeological Stewardship Network was created in 1984. And it was created out of a need for assistance. Interestingly enough, it was the Texas Archaeology Society, leadership within the Texas Archaeology Society, that helped identify this need. And they met with the then state archaeologists at the time, and they identified a handful of volunteers that were all kind of spread. A lot of them were in the Houston area, to basically help provide assistance with identifying sites in the light of urban sprawl and development, because we know with urban sprawl, we're losing archaeological resources faster than we can identify them or record them in some cases. And that includes historic cemeteries as well. So this program allows us to act a lot faster when we get an inquiry or a concern. We hear from a county historical commission or a landowner, or indirectly from an informant such as one of our volunteers, is how can we help that landowner first identify? Because if you don't have a site recorded, if it's not in the Archaeological Sites Atlas, it's not on the map, then it's really hard for developers to know there is an area of concern. Without a site being recorded, we have no way to make eligibility recommendations for state antiquity landmarks or for the National Register, let alone get that property listed. And so it's, that frontline defense is to work with these landowners, especially private landowners. Obviously, if there's a antiquities code requirement on state lands or there's a federal trigger, there should be archaeological investigations to record sites on those properties. But again, Texas being 95% privately owned, there's not all development projects will trigger a requirement for archaeological investigations. And so this is the landowner's beholden to ask for help. And so this slide actually illustrates a couple of projects that happened last year, is that our agency was approached by private landowners and institutions. Please help us record these resources on our land so that it's on record, that that's on the map, so that it can be protection or avoidance of these resources can be at least considered by those developers. And so that's what we do mainly with the Stewardship Network. Is one of our many goals is to investigate and record new sites. And it's so critical and sometimes it's difficult, to encourage the landowner to let you actually record it and have a trinomial assigned to that site. A lot of landowners are interested in what's on their property. They want to show you the artifacts, but there's a hesitation about having those sites actually recorded. we're not going to come take your property. We're not going to come and take your, materials, the state agency. But this is where the volunteer groups, such as the Houston Archaeology Society and our stewardship, is because it's neighbors helping neighbors. It's not the big bad state agency coming onto your property to look at those artifacts or record the site. We actually really rely on those volunteers to kind of ease that transition into meeting with the landowners to record those sites. And of course, we maintain strict confidentiality of names and locations. And so there's no risk of our agency putting that out there. Another important part of the stewardship network is they participate hugely, as y'all do at Houston Archaeology Society, is provide public outreach and education. Y'all were talking earlier about that Lego initiative. It's been a really big deal. I don't even know how many hundreds of inquiries we've gotten in the last 9 months. I know that multiple societies throughout the state of Texas have been fielding phone calls and Zoom calls and in-person initiatives. And I think it's really exciting because through that legal initiative, you just think about how many school children we've reached, on a national level. I think we got some inquiries from Brazil. I mean, I know it's an international initiative, but what that does is that tells us, one, school children are interested, and if it gives us the opportunity to talk about preservation and the importance of not digging just to dig, but knowing, what are we learning about? What's the point, and how can we protect our past and learn more about our culture and use that to educate the next generation. I think it's really exciting, and it's a very important part of what we do. That goes hat in hand, or same with mentor and motivate youth. And again, serve as a local resource on archaeological sites and historical matters. I speak with stewards. There's about 120 stewards in the network right now. We've just finished the nomination process to add an additional 8 in the coming year, or actually kicking off this spring. And, we speak on a weekly basis, multiple phone calls about how to handle certain inquiries. What kind of guidance can we provide the landowner? What kind of resources can we provide the landowner with? And so we're a resource for our volunteers, and it's exponential. I can handle, only so many inquiries on a weekly basis, but if I'm able to distribute those questions, inquiries, and emails and calls, and with the assistance of our stewards, all of a sudden it's exponential. So instead of 10 citizens in the state of Texas that I'm able to help, it could be over 100 on a weekly basis. And so that's really important and very exciting, because as the state agency, we're here to serve the people of Texas. And that's one of our major mandates. So, this is something that's going to be familiar to y'all. You're very aware of this as a regional archaeology society, but public archaeology it's something that's really important for us to talk about, and it's really important for us to embrace, because for many, many years, archaeology was siloed. It was academic. It was cultural resource management. It was private programs, and the public was kept out of a lot of investigations. Now, y'all have the privilege and almost the insider knowledge as a regional society, and many of y'all are members of the Texas Archaeology Society. Texas is really unique on the national stage in that there's a collaboration between professionals and avocationals and private landowners, all working towards the same goal. And that's that's kind of the definition of public archaeology, is that we're looking to engage the public, to educate them through things as simple as lectures like our little talk tonight, or touring sites, excavating sites, working with collections, participating in something as simple as an archaeology fair and a mock dig and teaching kids how to make pinch pots and appreciate just the vast and rich culture of Texas. And so we really are working to embrace that, and how can we do more, be more? And I think it's endless. I think the opportunities are vast. Um, but we want to also be intentional about it. Archaeological investigations are by nature destructive, and so there's always a balancing act as how can we do public archaeology at our historic sites, or in this particular slide, there's a foundation in Archer County that actually manages this old jail project. And if you were at the TAS annual meeting last year, there was actually a symposium on this where they found a way to conduct minimal archaeological investigations with maximum public outreach opportunities. And so they didn't excavate wholesale. They were small block excavations, relatively shallow because it was a historic site, that they were able to, fill in, and the grass grew back over again. They were able to engage hundreds of school students within just a single week period. And I think it's that intentional, minimal approach that we can do with public archaeology, um, is to share that excitement, that enthusiasm for discovery that we all feel still to this day when we find something new and exciting, but temper it with the least amount of destruction or damage to the archaeological sites. At that time, Texas is so rich in its heritage. I think we can spend a lot of time at one location, but we can spend a lot of time, or we can spend a little bit more time at, recording as many sites as we can get on the record, because that is that first step of preservation of these cultural resources. I apologize, my voice is hoarse. I'm coming off of a cold this week, so. Um, so this goes back to kind of my main focus of my talk, and what I wanted to emphasize is everybody's familiar with, there's multiple phases of archaeological investigations. There's phase one, which is survey or site inventory. Then there's testing, and then there's the fantastic full-scale excavations that we get to participate in very rarely. Usually it's through these long-term relationships that we develop with landowners, or through the TAS has a phenomenal field school every summer, where we have over 300 people excavating. But I really like to focus on this phase one, or inventory of survey. This is something that means a lot to those local landowners, is just confirming or verifying that they do have an archaeological site on their property. Historic, prehistoric, big or small, significant or not, we don't know until we go into testing. But I think it's that just affirmation and validation that yes, you do have a site on your property, and let's get that recorded, and let's get a trinomial assigned to it. That goes really far with those landowners. This also applies to identifying or relocating lost cemeteries. I saw John Rich earlier here. He's one of our stewards, and he's been conducting a lot of revisits to historic cemeteries, verifying locations, doing condition assessments, basically monitoring these at-risk cemeteries. And that is a really critical role that our stewards provide to us, because these cemeteries are everywhere. They're really remote. Many cemeteries have been lost. They don't show up on some maps. They're overgrown. They're easy for developers to encroach upon if they're not well established or marked. And so these inventories that can happen of these cultural resources, cemeteries, and archaeological sites are really that frontline defense for developers encroaching and unfortunately destroying archaeological sites. One of the pluses, the benefits, or the side effects that comes out of recording them is y'all talked about earlier for everybody who missed our meet and greet chit chat between 6 and 6:30 was there was a lot of conversations about processing and artifacts and analysis and I think this is one of the things that this is this is one of the easiest way to get people really engaged or interested in um, what we find because you can it's when you find something in the field it's dirty, you can't identify it. Once you wash it and you clean it and you actually can look at it underneath a microscope, there's just so much more information that you can find. And then people learn about stone tool technology and ceramic analysis and um, metal artifacts from the Spanish colonial time period. It's a lot easier to see in the lab. And so this is something that our agency has really stepped up on. We have a full-time presence at our lab in East Austin now, and not only are we processing the current TAS Field School, but we housed the collection for Travis County, that old massive collection that they had worked on almost 10 years of excavations of the Joyful Horse. And they have finished cataloging and analyzing that project, and they're going to write it up. And the landowner donated the bulk of the collections to Travis County, and they're going to turn it into a series of teaching collections that can be loaned out for lithics, which is really exciting and really positive. And I bring that up because I do think that is an important um, responsibility for us, and I say this, with the mirror full in our faces, you know, the excitement of discovery it's huge. What draws us in. But it's also an ethical responsibility for us to also teach um, that stewardship of this material that we find and what happens after the discovery and helps us kind of temper that. Yes, it is very exciting to find stuff, but it's really important to do that analysis and turn that information into education and outreach for others to learn about. So I've talked a lot about field investigations and survey and analysis and excavation. Um, but there are other ways that our stewards are really helpful and really involved. Again, like I said, we get so many inquiries. I didn't have an example from your region, but I know you guys have got great leadership in your society as far as like what other types of public outreach and things are happening in your area. So I wanted to share this. This is really just a neat story. Keith Elwell, he's wearing bright UT orange shirt there on the left. Him and his wife lived in Collin County for a while, and while he was there, he made connections with this community group called Cultivate. And this actually is this is work that he started last year and is going on into this summer as well. There's a large parcel of land that this nonprofit called Cultivate works on. It's just south of the Red River, really near the very significant Caddo Sanders site off that Red River. It's a nonprofit that focuses on habitat restoration. So it teaches not only about cultural heritage and Native Americans, but it also teaches about the natural environment. And it also talks about sustainable living off the land, cultivation, affordable housing. And so through connecting children and their families to nature, it helps kind of create that baseline very early on, sustainable lifestyle. So our stewards have been working with master naturalists and other volunteers to talk to their summer campers. And so they have field trips and on this property. It's hundreds of acres, but they also have hands-on activities with cultivation and horticulture and that type of stuff. And I like to share this story because it just shows you the breadth of what our volunteers can do. We're not siloed. We're not just talking about stone tools. We're not just talking about historic ceramics. We are engaged in a much more holistic kind of education um, through all these different activities that we do. This is another recent project that our agency has been working on, involved with our volunteers and more landowner assistance. I don't know if y'all have had the opportunity or heard about. Um, you are familiar with our marine archaeology program. Well, um, not very far from Houston on the Trinity River, um, our our state marine archaeologist, Amy Borgens, and a couple of our stewards, a couple years ago went and visited a site on the Trinity River where the remains of a vessel, and you can see this picture is from 2021. Um, they initially thought it was an 1865 steamboat called Mary Conley. It was eroding out of the riverbank. Some archival research and additional follow-up confirmed it is that. It was built in Mobile, Alabama in 1865, and it arrived on the Trinity in the early 1870s in time to be a part of the large cotton season business between 1869 and 1870. It did not have a very long life, and unfortunately, it wrecked or was scuttled. Probably due to just low water levels in the Trinity. On the Trinity River was navigable, but we all know it was not that navigable for much time. Very recently, 2005, this actually happened just a couple of weeks ago. Texas A&M student started preparing the timbers and all the associated material that you see here on the shoreline as part of the Shipwreck Tagging Archaeological Management Program. And this shipwreck, much like many along our coast that are exposed and then covered and exposed and covered, it's logistically and economically impossible to preserve them all in a museum or a collection setting. However, this shipwrecks tagging program, also known as STAMP. It's conducted in partnership with the Florida Public Archaeology Network, and basically timbers are tagged with QR codes and unique identification numbers. And once they're dislodged and they travel downstream, they can be scanned and tracked. So this data tracks the movement of the timbers and helps researchers better understand just kind of the activity of degrading hulls. And you're going to say, like, wait a minute, that's not preservation in place. We can't stop natural processes from shoreline erosion on lakes. We can't stop natural processes of those giant shell middens along the coast. We can't stop the erosion or the destruction of sites by many natural processes. We can try to mitigate or offset what development does, but we know we can't stop those processes. And so this is why recording, going back to that, the significance or the importance of recording these resources in the time and place where we actually have the opportunity before it's lost to time. So this project is ongoing. The A&M student has just been working on tagging them. They'll continue to do tagging projects and be able to follow through for her thesis research. So this is a really unique project. When a lot of people think about marine archaeology program, we think about the Texas coast, the ocean, but these are also river-related shipwrecks as well. All right. I'm gonna leave it at a handful of things. Public archaeology, what kind of opportunities we have. I know that Houston has a lot of projects that you're working on. I do encourage you, if you haven't had the opportunity to excavate a mission or a Presidio in the state of Texas, one of your best bets is to participate in a TAS field school. because we have the opportunity to work with Dr. Tamara Walter. And this year's project is a follow-up from last year. I was really lucky enough to participate in this early metal detecting that we did last year. And it is really exciting when you find 18th century bridle bits and other metal artifacts that are clearly dating to that time period. So, large-scale excavations, block excavations are going to be conducted at this Presidio site. The campgrounds are actually pretty decent, and they're practically in walking distance to the site. So, no long drives. So that's another opportunity. Of course, there'll be survey and other opportunities as well. So, I hope to see you all there. I do plan on making it for at least a couple of days. And it's always exciting. I had to take some information off this slide. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly where the next Texas Archaeological Stewardship Network is going to be. It's going to be somewhere in Central Texas. It will be August 1st, so I will follow up with you all. And the reason I share this information with the group, the Texas Archaeological Stewardship Network, is we're always looking for new members, interested parties to join us. If you are interested and you've been talking with other stewards and you want to get to know more about the program, we do invite guests to this annual meeting and workshop. It's a full day event. This year we are going to be focusing on a couple of topics, working on site recording, specifically historic sites, what to look for. There may be a hands-on, or not a hands-on workshop, but other discussions about faunal and biowork analysis. Danielle Julian, who's one of our regional archaeologists, that's her specialty. Y'all mentioned earlier how well received the Zoark Academy was. And so we know that's a topic that, especially identifying faunal remains in the field, is really helpful. And so we hope to have actually a workshop component on that as well. So again, if you're interested, we do welcome guests, and you can get a hold of me directly, or you can talk to Bob and John Rich and other stewards who are members of HAS. And then I think the final thing is I'd like to say is that Texas Archaeology Month is in October, but we all know that events are ongoing all year round. And so please don't feel like you have to constrain or wait until October. But we look forward to seeing you all at the next upcoming events here in the coming year. Let's see. My final slide is, I know we have some time for questions. I try not to talk too long, but I always do. But open up the floor. I don't know if there's anything in the chat, but definitely be happy to take questions here in our discussion.
Okay. Well, thank you, Becky. That was very, very interesting. Good update on the TASN. Frank, is there anything in the chat? I don't see anything in the chat right now. But I have a question.
Hold on. Betsy Whitmire. Well, she's typing it up. Go ahead and ask yours, Bob. You go first.
Okay. I have a question on. We try to do as much outreach as we can within our time allowed. And I like your comment about trying to make it more inclusive, Becky. What we normally do, we restrict our activities in the field to our membership, mainly for liability reasons, because we work on private land.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's
have
very
to be
consistent with a lot of other societies. Yep.
Isn't it? Okay. So we have to be careful. But I love to open it out. And on some occasions I have. In fact, I've got somebody maybe coming out this weekend who's a friend of a friend who's interested in having a look at whether archaeology is good for them. And I don't have a problem with that, really. But do you have any suggestions on how we could open this out rather more than just doing that without us getting into some legal aspects, with a landowner?
Well, and that's, that is a big deal because it
It's
truly is up to
tough.
the landowner. Like, what are they comfortable with? What do they feel like? I know there's concerns with having miners on site or on excavations. And this
Yeah,
is where having those mock digs or those archaeology fairs or maybe partnering with a city park or a local museum where it's a mock dig. It's not an actual like on a private
yeah,
landowner property. It's of a discovery process that they are engaging in, but it's in more of a controlled environment.
I don't really buy into those sort of things, I'm afraid. I like to get
Yeah.
these people doing it for real. Let's do it for real. This is what happens in the field,
Well, and again, that goes back to the relationship with the landowner. I mean,
Right.
we do recommend is those waivers, those liability waivers, that be
Yeah,
developed
we
with the
have.
landowner and sign off on those. I do think when you have members or anybody excavating on private property or anywhere, I think that membership status actually is really important because they've signed that ethics
We,
statement, that
yeah,
agreement.
we do have waivers,
Yeah, and that's
as much as
really
they're
important.
worth in court, but
Well,
but we
eh,
try.
yeah, it gives the landowner a level of protection. I know y'all participated in major projects where there's a lot of work just done through screening. I think that
Mhm.
there's a lot less risk in that screening and artifact identification versus like, large scale excavations that people can fall into. Um,
Right.
so I think that there is a way. Lab days, I know lab days aren't as exciting as the discovery in the field, but that's still working with real artifacts. You're
We
working,
are for some people.
yeah. Well, in August, I prefer to work in the lab every day as opposed
It's
to in the field.
it's cooler.
Yes,
Right. You're
yes,
inside.
yes.
All
Um,
right, Bob. If you're done, I was
Okay.
going to say,
Thank you,
Betsy
Becky.
Whitmire, are you on listening? Betsy, are you here?
Okay, here I am.
Hey,
Yeah, go
Betsy.
ahead and ask your
Hi,
question. You said you had a long one. Go
I have
ahead.
a long question. It's a
Uh-oh.
rather elementary question that I think, Bob could answer for me or any of the stewards, the local stewards, but it's really up to the private landowner what does and doesn't get to happen on their property, right?
correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because there's something that's been in the back of my mind for several years that I would love for it to be protected, but it's on uh, the private property of a development down in Sugarland. It's just, and I know that Louis Albach saw it, and maybe I bet John Rich has seen it, but it's the remains of a brick sugar processing building left over from when Sugarland, was sugarcane plantations. And last I heard, it's still kind of back in the woods off their golf course in this fabulous
That's
upscale
the
neighborhood.
Samuel May Williams and his brother opened the original. That's where Imperial Sugar came from, and they had a sugar press. Is that over off of? Oh God, what's the name of the creek down there? I'm losing my mind.
Oyster, Oyster
Oyster
Creek.
Creek. Thank you. Yes.
Mhm.
That place is known. It is well known, if that's indeed the one that we're talking about, and protected and whatever. Like you said, I assume that's private property or
Are you
owned by a
sure it's
developer down there.
protected? Is
I
it
don't.
protected?
I do not. I've read up on it. I've read up on the Williams brothers extensively when we were excavating at the property near San Felipe,
Is
but
it
I don't know
is it
anything for
is
a
it a
fact.
known archaeology site? Is it actually in the Atlas, Becky? Maybe we should check and see if
Yeah,
it's
I'd have to look. No, but that's
recorded.
that's
I
a
don't
really
know.
great question, and I would like to address it.
It's
So
always
it
concerned me.
goes back to the landowner rights, and so in
Hmm.
order to record an archaeological site, you do need to have. I mean, people can discover stuff on Google Earth all the time now. You can find, the remains of structures on LiDAR. But to record an archaeological site, you really need to have that boots on the ground opportunity to
Yeah.
get the
Yeah.
coordinates, get the boundaries, at least get a discussion or at least an overview of what cultural material you're finding, identify features, time periods, artifacts. And in order to get that boots on the ground, you've got to have landowner permission to do that. The only other
Mhm.
way that an archaeological site can be encountered or come upon, if it's not through that landowner relationship, on a non-regulatory end, is if there is that federal undertaking or a LCRA line that's going through it where there's a state or federal requirement that they have to allow an archaeological survey to come through and record the
Yeah.
site. And those kind of regulatory triggers, it's a requirement. So if an archaeologist is doing a survey and they find a site on that survey, they are required by law to record it. And because they have permission through those permits on that project, that allows them to do it. But as volunteers, as private citizens, me as a state of Texas employee, if I am not invited by the landowner to come and record that site on their property, we have to defer to their wishes. And so that's where local volunteers that have that network and that community and making those relationships. And sometimes it's a long game. Sometimes it takes years to
Yes.
develop that communication and trust.
Mhm.
So,
I
so,
just feel like it is profoundly important.
so
And I don't
Betsy,
know if
Betsy,
you have any ideas. I mean, I guess it boils down to relationships. I think
It
I'm going to
does.
guess that they're kind of, ashamed of it, to have this terrible legacy on their property that involved slavery, or maybe they don't care at
Well,
all.
there's
But
also a concern if somebody finds out about this really amazing, significant site on our property, they're going to try to take it away from us. And we don't do
that's
it in
not going to
public
happen.
domain. Yeah, that's
If I
Betsy,
may,
can I suggest, Betsy, that we take this offline? That if you
okay.
have an issue with this, you talk to me.
Uh-huh.
I'm a local steward,
Yeah.
and you give me as much information as you can, and I'll see what I can do about it. And I'll
Yeah.
obviously be liaising with Becky
Yeah.
about.
it's a great question, and
Yeah, it is a good
it's a
question.
delicate
If
balancing act. I mean, I know that we all encounter that where we know or we hear of a great resource, but without that invitation,
who do they talk to?
yeah, it
i-
and
if
it can take time, but it's usually successful. Be
Yeah,
And of
patient.
if I
course
may,
it will take time, Becky.
and of
Betsy,
course
let me tell you,
there is the Fort Bend group, so they might have some relationships that we don't have. So,
well,
maybe.
also, Betsy, you
Yeah,
mentioned Louis Albach, and if Lewis was down there, I'd almost bet that Linda Gorski knew about the invite to go down there. So
oh,
possibly we
there are.
can we can
Yeah,
contact Linda and see if she has any information
well,
on
there are
this.
several stewards in HAS and Fort Bend
Right.
um, who could be involved in this.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't
well,
hesitate,
anyway,
Mrs.
it's
Talk
just
to
been
those Fort
something
Bend
that,
people.
oh,
I
I
know
see
that
Doug Boyd.
Johnny.
Doug Boyd was in. I see John
And
Rich was in. They know.
so we don't spend too much time on this.
Yeah.
And by the way, John Rich did chime in
Put
on
your
here
heads
on the
together.
chat. He
Yeah.
said,
John
talk
Rich
with
would
Bob
know.
Crosser and Bruce Grethen at the Fort Bend Society for more
Fort Bend
information on that
folks.
old sugar barn, is what John
Yeah.
said. Okay.
So
Yeah.
And
there are
also,
several resources around in the stewardship network that can pick this up and liaise
Yeah.
with
There might
Becky
be some
on what
people
to
with
do
with
next.
personal connections.
all
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
Okay.
we
Well,
move
thank you
on
for
here.
taking my question.
Oh,
Thank you.
Okay.
absolutely.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Betsy. John Rich also asked, how does one become a TASN steward? The procedure, who do
Well,
they contact? I know you did
I thought he
touch on
was
it
a
at the end
steward.
there. Yeah,
I,
John's already a
um,
steward, isn't he?
he is,
he
but
is,
if
but I think
anybody
he's
else is
asking just for
interested,
the audience, and I appreciate the question very much. We need to get to know you, and you need to get to know us. Basically, there's a vetting process. We look for um, volunteer archaeologists who have some experience in or retired archaeologists who are looking to continue to practice in the industry. Like I said, the best way to do is get to know us, reach out to us, let us know you're interested in. It's like I said, the vetting process is we accept nominations once a year. We review them at the end of every year. So, up until December. The nominations are then reviewed at the staff level. We conduct interviews. We look for recommendations, so referrals with those nominations. And then we also we have a stewards advisory committee, a group of professional and avocational archaeologists that are basically help us review, and that's part of our network, right? So it's our broader network who people who serve on the advisory committee are the current president of the Texas Archaeology Society, retired state archaeologist employees. Tamara Walter currently serves as one as well. But there's 9 different advisors, and
All
so
this chat.
after that vetting process, we put forward those nominations, and then we invite. There's training involved. We do have like these regional trainings, but these one-on-one trainings as well. So thank you for the question, John. I hope that answered it. But if you have more questions or are interested, please just contact me.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's pretty much all the questions off of
Isn't
chat. I got one that we can end up with regarding that steamboat wreck that they found up there near Liberty. Do I assume that you said Texas A&M? Is that A&M Galveston that works out with that?
I think it's actually the one in Bryan College Station. They do have a marine archaeology program.
Yeah, but that's down at A&M Galveston. That's what I'm saying. My son went down there, and I know they do diving and the like. And I was
Yeah.
wondering, do you have any idea if they did any diving on that wreck?
I don't think they dove on it because it is just so exposed out of that shoreline.
Yeah.
I'd have to confirm with I do
Okay.
I do think it was a lot of like there was maybe a little bit of a canoe and a lot of clambering around the the shoreline.
Okay. They never did find the old Yellowstone steamboat, did they? The one that made the run down through San Felipe after
That is
delivering the
not
cannon up to Sam Houston and all that.
that is not ringing a bell, but Amy Borgens has an encyclopedic memory.
No, they lost track of that thing. The
Yeah.
story was it delivered them from New Orleans up to Hempstead to Sam Houston's army up there. This is before the Battle of San Jacinto, of course. Then it ran the gauntlet coming back down the Brazos River, and it ran down through San Felipe. And the Mexicans were shooting at it. They had all these hay bales up to protect themselves. And they knew that it was running up and down the coast for a few years after that. And then eventually it sank somewhere. Nobody knows where, what state, if it was scuttled or whatever. But it's really a Texas artifact, if they could ever find it, at
Oh,
the bottom of some
absolutely.
river somewhere. But
And so just so y'all know, the entire reason we have the Antiquities Code of Texas is because of the discovery of the 1554 silver plate vessels.
right,
We did not have a shipwreck protection or any law in the state of Texas until then. That discovery prompted the legislature to actually put it into law. So all shipwrecks in navigable waters, rivers, and along the coast belong to the state of Texas. So,
Mm.
ta-da, they belong to us. And so, even if it hasn't been found, it still is underneath the authority of the state of
they
Texas.
only found 2 of the 3 ships that sank down there by Port
So
Isabel.
that's
I
your
think they
next job, sir, is that you're going to help Amy
no,
find it.
they think the other one was maybe when they did the cut. They did that cut down there that they dredged it up. It's probably buried now, and
They found 3 or 4. 3 of
yeah,
them, 4 ships. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why that dredging activity has to be monitored by
yeah.
sonar.
But again, back in the '60s, nobody was caring about that too much, but
Yeah,
now they
well,
do.
now they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, I read
Okay.
several
Anybody else
books
have any
on.
Okay,
questions?
folks, I think we're done with the chat. Any more questions for Becky?
Gary has one.
Gary has
No,
one.
no. I was fixing to say thank you for the
Oh,
presentation.
Oh, okay.
thank you. Okay.
Well, thank you guys again for having me, and
All
I
right,
really enjoyed the conversation.
let's wrap this up. thank you to everyone who participated in the meeting, and I wish everyone a very pleasant evening.
Thank you,
Good
Becky.
night.
We appreciate it.
See ya.
Thanks, Becky.
Okay.
You
Let's
bet.
let's
Thank
leave the
you.
meeting open.
Okay. And you guys who are going to come out to the Lone Oak, I guess what, Saturday
Stop
morning.
the recording, please.
Oh, let me stop that. I forgot. Hold on.
Okay. Ooh, is recording off or not?
They changed it. I got multiple buttons I have to hit now.